So welcome to another talk here on a Friday night. And as I mentioned earlier, just come back from UK, teaching a couple of retreats and a number of talks, different places. And you must say that so many people you meet in the UK, in London, always come up to you and say they've seen you on YouTube. And that how wonderful that YouTube presence is, to be able to listen to all these talks and to all the meditation instructions just online. Because sometimes people just can't get to a centre on a Friday night or Saturday night. They may be working, maybe too far away, they may be sick, but at least having it online means that you can hear it, listen to it any time, any place. And apparently the many of the people, they listen to it on their cars on their way to work. So it's really important because people have road rage these days, and it's important that never happens. The best example of road rage which I ever came across was two stupid people. One was extremely stupid in New York. I'm not quite sure what the other person did to actually upset him, but they were chasing each other through the streets of New York, and they finally came to an intersection where both cars had to stop at the red light, and that gave the opportunity for one of the people really upset at the other to jump out of his car and go banging, banging, banging on the window of the car of the guy who he was upset at, angry at. And that was really scary. If you're in a car at the red intersection, at the intersection of the red light, and somebody's banging your car trying to get through, but his windows managed to survive, they were strong enough, and so as soon as the lights changed to green, he was off. And the other fellow who was banging on the windows turned around to get into his car to carry on the chase. But in New York, you don't leave the doors of your car open with the keys in the ignition and the engine running. A street kid saw that and so was in the car and drove it off. So this fellow who was so angry, saw the object of his anger run away and his car go away as well, stolen. So that sometimes that's what anger does, it makes you really, really stupid. You can't really say that was a nice thing to happen to him, but at least it was amusing, and probably he'll never do the road rage again. Lost his car. But it just sort of shows you that sometimes the way that people live their life, they're always complaining, getting angry, and sometimes you ask why. And when I sort of gave those little anecdotes and talks, many of the people actually remember them, so they play the YouTube talks in their car so that they don't sort of get road rage. They can calm down on the way to work. But also the case is that I know that one of the Anagarikas down in monastery in Perth, in Bodhinyana Monastery, Serpentine, that he's got such a good sense of humour. I love telling new jokes to him. But the problem is when I tell a new joke to him, what happens, he sort of starts laughing hysterically. And I had to stop on one journey because he was totally out of control of his car, weaving across the lanes, like driving, just laughing. He wasn't paying any attention at all. So I'm sure that's going to be another thing which the police department in Western Australia crack down upon. They've already cracked down on drink driving, drugs, using your mobile phones or something. The next one will be Ajahn Brahm talks. It's very dangerous because you lose your sense of what's going on and weaving all over the lanes. But it does have some benefits as well, because it also, I don't know why this is, but people were telling me that maybe because these talks are calming, reassuring, they're not sort of they're not telling people off, they're not shouting at people, which means that it calms people down. And at the end of their day, when they try to get to sleep at night, not just elderly, mature people, but also kids, sometimes that they can't go to sleep without listening to one of my talks. So they're quite well known now, and people keep on coming up to me and said, "Oh, Ajahn Brahm, your talk sent me to sleep at night." You sometimes wonder, is that a compliment or a criticism? But it's always a very good thing, because a lot of times people have insomnia. But there's something different there, because when people have seen all these talks so many times and they see it on YouTube, why do you come and listen to it live? And there's something different there between when you talk to people and actually when you actually see people face to face. It's not just if you just email them or Skype them or send text messages, or even worse, send tweets. You always tend to get into trouble. And another reason why is that because there's not that facial contact. There's not that, even what they sometimes call in Buddhism, that transmission which goes across, from one person to another. It's an example. It's so often the case that when somebody really, really angry comes into a room, that you can feel them, your hackles rise. I never actually found out what hackles were. Whatever they are, they rise. The hackles in the back. Hackles. Dog hackles. Well, why do they say that to human beings? I'm not a dog. But anyway, when the hackles rise, how can that happen? Why can you feel sort of somebody's anger or ill will or their danger, and they just, they come into the room? And I think it may be the case that there were some people. I remember one of my friends, the monks. It was actually Venerable Gautami's brother over in Malaysia, who's a monk. He said that he was having a dana, which is the alms offering in somebody's house, and this fellow came into the room, and he was just so uncomfortable when this fellow came in the room. It turned out it was a public hangman in Malaysia. And he didn't know who he was, but he came in the room. Oh, that was really, really sort of something which was very unpleasant. Just the demeanour or the vibes coming off this guy. But it's true also when you come across a really good person, very kind and gentle, that has a different effect on you. Which is one of the reasons why it's not just the teachings, like in reading a book or going on YouTube. It's also like being with good, kind people. It's a totally different ball game. Which is one of the reasons, I think I gave that talk someplace recently, why it is that just when there is the internet and we just communicate on the internet, we are missing out a lot of what's real communications. And the kindness and even sometimes the fear which comes up when somebody's really crossing over the line, we can actually feel that. So there's something much more than the spoken word. There's the felt response. And I always think that that's so important to recognize. Even, when we know what's right, what's wrong, the goodness, which I think apparently that somebody told me the Victorian government has finally passed the law for voluntary euthanasia. So, sometimes people ask me difficult moral questions for some people. You look at your books, you think about it too much, and that can cause you a lot of confusion. But if that's your old mum, or someone you visit in a hospital, feel it in your heart what is the right thing to do, the wrong thing to do. So much of my life is when people ask me these big moral questions, and I've got some authority, and You can't just sort of say, oh, this is what I think, because people actually follow me. So I've got a lot of responsibility here to give them a good idea, not to know what's right and what's wrong, but to find out, to feel it, to know it inside of oneself. And that is where a lot of times I develop mindfulness, not on the head and the intellect, but I develop the mindfulness on the heart. This feeling, there's something inside a human being which can know what's right and what's wrong. Example which I've often given, which I collect these examples and just bring them up in a different context from time to time. There was this very fascinating case of, actually a very terrible example of a massacre which happened in the Vietnam War in the village of My Lai. US soldiers were told to go into a village, kill every man, woman and child. Indiscriminately. Why? I'm not sure, but this enterprising psychologist, sociologist, I forget what she was, but she decided to do a follow-up, I think it was on TV, a follow-up 30, 50 years or something after, no, was it 50 years? It was 1970s. Yeah, 30 years. 30 years after that terrible event, to see actually the karmic consequences of doing something like that. And apparently nearly all of the soldiers she found were having addiction problems, lack of self-esteem, socially inept. There's so many things which made their life a lot of suffering. But there's always the exception, which is an important part of like psychology. You know, you see somebody does this and see what happens, another person does something else and sees what happens. And this was the case of a black African-American soldier who refused to go into battle. He refused to go in there on the orders to kill every person he saw in that village. And they interviewed him. Why? How can you do that? Refuse an order during war. Did you not realize the consequences? Because he got put in a military prison for 3 or 4 years for disobeying an order. And it was a terrible place to be in military prison. And they asked him, was he a religious zealot? Was he a strict Christian or Quaker or what? And he told them, he said, I had no religion much at all. And the only reason I joined the army was to get out of the ghettos where I was brought up. It was the only way to get some sort of life. I didn't have much education. Never came to the Buddhist Society of Western Australia. Our fault, because we weren't around then. But he said that he felt in his heart it was wrong, he couldn't do it. Right in here, he said, I just can't, I know the consequences for me personally are going to be really painful, but I just cannot do that. I often think that there was a person who hadn't been educated, hadn't been taught what's right and what's wrong, but knew what was right and wrong, much more so than people who've been taught. And sometimes I wonder just how much of those teachings we tell people instead of informing them how to find out for yourselves. So a lot of times in this, in these like talks, yes, you can actually put forth information, but to actually feel it, to really feel what's right and what's wrong, is so important. And it's the same with not just moral questions which we have to deal with, but also just things like the meditation which we do. I've often told the monks, and Venerable Sunya next to me can confirm it, that in meditation we can't think our way through meditation. We can't conceptualize, we feel our way through meditation. And what I mean by that, I think I've already told you in the guided meditation I did earlier. You feel your body. If you think about it, keep straight. Put your hands in your lap so it forms a circle. Contain the whole body. Don't be sloppy. Certainly don't sort of sleep on the floor. But you know, that wonderful example here. There was a person who came here many, many years ago, and she slept on the floor during the meditation, which you think, well, the worst part was she started snoring during the meditation, really loudly. And so I saw people, they just woke her up. And that was my talk for that evening, because I talked to that woman before she came in. Just years ago, she was a victim of horrendous domestic abuse. Terrible. She was terrified of being at home. And she came here and she felt this was a safe place. A place she could relax, that she wouldn't be hurt. And so, quite naturally, she just felt that what she needed to do was to lay down and catch up on some of her sleep. And sometimes we can be so critical when we don't know what we're criticizing and why people do these things. And after that, I think next time she came, someone got her a pillow or something. To be kind, because you feel the right time for kindness and the right time for compassion, the right time to let things be. And so that was one example of just how we can feel our way through meditation, can feel our way, just how to relax the body, and especially how to relax the mind. Every so often when I go overseas, people, they have a bit more time to talk with me, and they say, oh yeah, I try to do meditation, but I just can't do it. And I think because you're thinking about it instead of feeling it. You're feeling your way through meditation, you feel what's right, what's wrong, what actually works. And if you can actually learn how to feel that way through meditation, what is peace? Now, how does peace actually grow in your body and in your mind? If you try to do stuff, you force it, of course it's not peacefulness. If you fight a war to make peace, it doesn't happen. But little by little, we can actually get to real peace. I sometimes say there's two types of peace. There's a peace of mind and giving someone a piece of your mind. Those two are totally different. They're spelt differently as well. But you don't actually get the problems and difficulties out of the way to make peace. Peace is just an attitude, a feeling, which you can actually develop. And once you have peace in your own heart, it's relatively easy to bring peace to others. So a lot of times that, a part of my job, and part of everybody's job, that sometimes that people are really struggling with life, they have tragedies in life, that somebody sort of dies, and they lose their job, they get cheated, they get sick. There's so many tragedies which people have in life, and they come to somebody like a monk or a nun for some solace. And again, teaching my other monks and nuns how to do this, a lot of time you don't have to know the answers. Just to be a kind, peaceful person is all you need. Just to have an atmosphere of peace surrounding you, which you've grown in your own heart. Then people come, they're concerned, they're upset, and there's so many experts out there, so many people who got certificates to be a counselor, to be a meditation teacher, to be this, to be that, but they're missing out. They know the theory, but it's not the theory, it's actually where it's coming from inside. And to develop that aura of peace in the place where you live is so important. One of our members here years ago, he said he went to a monastery, a temple in Thailand one day, and when he went into that temple in Thailand, he saw a young Thai lady. She was sitting on a bench crying her eyes out, weeping. And because he was an Australian Buddhist, he went into the temple to, I don't know what he was doing there, but he didn't know whether it was culturally appropriate to sit next to her. If you were sort of a Westerner, you'd sit next to her, are you okay? Anything I can do to help? he thought maybe she might misunderstand him, so she just he went into the temple and left her on the bench to cry. And after half an hour or an hour in the Buddhist temple, he came out again. And she was much more settled down. She wasn't crying so hysterically. She was just a little bit sad. So he thought he'd take the opportunity anyway to have a word with her, see if he could do anything. So he sat next to her. Anything I can do? I saw you weeping here. Is there anything I can do for you? He said, no. She said, she spoke pretty good English apparently. She said, I'm fine now, I'm okay now. So what was the problem anyway? And she said, I lost my car keys. And I was so upset. I never needed someone to tell me what to do. I just needed a quiet place, a safe place, a place where I could just feel some peace and settle down and allow all of this problem to go away. And it reminded me of a story I haven't told it for a long time, which I told in the UK, of this person who came to the monastery I used to stay in Thailand, in the northeast. He came there and he said, can I stay a few days in the temple? I said, yeah, sure. So he stayed a few days in the temple. I thought to meditate, to help out, do some good karma, to relax. I never asked him, why do you want to come and stay in the temple, in the monastery? And about 4 days later, because I was the one he came to first of all and asked for permission, that he came to me, just out of respect, to say, can I go now? I said, yeah, of course, this is not a prison. Of course you can go. And I couldn't help but ask, why did you want to come anyway? You know what he answered? He said, I had this really terrible, bad argument with my wife. So I came to my monastery for 4 days to cool off. Now I feel cool, I can actually go back again. And I thought, what a wonderful way to deal with domestic disputes. Go to the temple for 4 days, cool off, have a chance to have perspective on just what you've done and the relationships. You don't need to be told. You need to have the safe place, the calmness, to be able to feel it in your own heart. And that's not what you can get from watching the YouTube or listening to books. That's what you get from actually being in a calm, peaceful temple, in a place where people are kind to one another. It's actually some sort of transmission, something which you get by being there. Just like that lady lost her keys, just by being there. But one of those other stories, which was, this gentleman came to see me in the dining hall at Bodhinyana Monastery once. And he said, I've come to thank you. And I said, for what? Because I'd never seen him before. I've come to thank you for your car park. And that was really weird. Why have you thanking me for the car park in Bodhinyana Monastery? It's not like if you have a car park here, next to the shopping centre and just park here for free and just go to do something else. This was, in Serpentine. I said, what are you talking about? And he announced that he was in the Shire of Serpentine, Jarrahdale. He was the building surveyor. And he had all the stress of many builders and other clients coming to see him. I want it done now. I want it approved tomorrow. This is my business. It's wasting too much time. He was so stressed out in his job that every time he felt really under the pump, as they say, pressured by all parties, he would simply get in his car, drive to our car park, which is only 10 minutes away, and just park there, turn off the engine, open the windows, and just chill out. Find a peaceful place to stay, and just to relax. It wasn't I never knew he was there. Never asked for anything. He said, next week I'm retiring, leaving the job I've been working all my life, but I just really wanted to come and say thank you for your car park. because it was close to the monastery, close to the temple. People could actually feel it. And all these other little examples. It's wonderful that we can have this place that opened up so people can come up and stay and visit here during the weekdays or other days. And one of the reasons why this is one of the reasons I'm telling this, because I was in London the last couple of weeks and going past the Westminster Cathedral, and that used to be one place I loved going into when I was a young man. I was a Buddhist, but I liked going into there because in London there were so few places you could go just to relax. It was really busy. You go into the little old stories such as I told to someone. One of the Buddhists there was working in Kew Gardens, and he said, "Oh, why did you come to Kew Gardens?" And I said, "Oh, I've got bad memories of Kew Gardens. It's beautiful botanical gardens in London." "What was that?" She said, "Oh, when I was preparing to go to Thailand to become a monk, I was learning all the chanting. All the chanting you have to do. And it was one sunny afternoon, maybe September, October, and I was lying down there, just on the grass, looking at my chanting. And in those days, I think some of you have seen what I looked like when I was a layperson. It wasn't bald like this. It was like Jimi Hendrix with a beard underneath. I called it the donut look, but a lot of really big hair. And actually, my mother always used to tell me to get my hair cut, and when I did, she said, "That's not what I meant." But you know what happened? There I was, just lying down there, just doing some chanting, and maybe because it was loving kindness chanting or whatever. From one of the ponds, this duck, absolutely duck, waddled over and started pulling at my hair. Thought it was nesting material. I had to chase it up, but I can't chase ducks away, I'm just too kind. So if you could only waited another couple of weeks, you could have the whole lot of hair. So I was sent over from Thailand for it. Trying to make a nest. Have a long hair. But anyway, we liked, even that place was really noisy, too many ducks. So I used to go into Westminster Abbey because it had a history. It was like a holy place. And if I was busy doing stuff, shopping or getting visas or doing all sorts of stuff, working, you go in there because it was quiet. There's huge caverns. Sometimes you wonder what was holy about that place. It's just the space and the silence which it enclosed. You go in there, and the sound of the traffic you could hardly hear. It's so huge, spacious. No fumes of cars or trucks. So I loved that place. Until one day, just before I went to Thailand, I went in there just to have some peace and quiet, have a relaxing rest. No one would come up and talk to you, which is brilliant. You don't need that, just get the atmosphere. And I was almost crying afterwards, so disappointed. They had installed a PA system, and they were getting 24/7 either commentaries or announcements. There was no quiet at all left. To me, they destroyed the sanctity of that ancient monument, the ancient holy building, with noise. Sometimes the noise, the sound, it covers up, the sacred, the peace, the stillness, the silence. So that is why just feeling the happiness, feeling the peace, feeling the silence, feeling it, not being afraid, not disturbing the silence, but really getting into it. That is so therapeutic. Not even needing to be told, having the space and the time to feel and develop that feeling and develop the safety of just being in a comfortable, safe, secure place where you can just be. And all of the problems and difficulties, very often they disappear with silence. as long as it's in a safe, secure place. And that's one of the reasons why sometimes we always think we need to do stuff. Think it. Solve the problems with our thoughts, with looking at the books. But a lot of times we don't need to do that. A lot of times you just need the space to stop, to feel, and to find out truth for ourselves, instead of being told. Yeah, to protect you, take away all the stupid stuff, but then find some nice quiet. I was disappointed when I went to England this time. It was so warm. I missed the cold. And the snow. I love snow, especially on the photographs, but maybe not when it's all around you, falling on you. But I would never, ever, 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 ever forget when I went to the UK first time, and I was really, for Christmas time, that's a time family would congregate, so I thought that would be a time. You can't say kill two birds with one stone, otherwise you have to visit family here, family there, family all over the place, all came to one place. We don't use that word, kill two birds with one stone, that's very un-Buddhist. So we say these days to cut 2 carrots with the same knife. We have to change these little similes to make them a bit more compassionate. So I could I could cut about 5 or 6 carrots with one visit, coming over Christmas time. But what I did then, it was a very, very, very cold winter. And just afterwards, in January, it was so cold that it was minus 26 degrees in the forest. Now that was cold. All the monks would actually, in this little monastery temple in Sussex, they would open up the refrigeration doors to warm up. That's not true, I just made that up. But it was really cold. And they have a saying in English, only mad dogs and Englishmen go out in the, they say midday sun. When it gets too cold, only mad monks and Englishmen, and I qualified both ways, go out into the forest when it's minus 26 degrees. And I did, and I never ever regret that. It was freezing cold. But you can actually rug up, put hats and socks and scarves and goodness knows what else around you. So I went out minus 26 degrees in the forest. No one else was around at all. No cars were on the roads. All the roads were blocked, or they were too icy, it's too dangerous. There were no planes up in the sky, no aircraft. I think Heathrow, Gatwick would have been all closed. And the animals, all the animals were hibernating. There's no animals on the ground, no birds in the sky. And it was a very calm, windless morning. Sun was shining, but it was freezing. And to this day, I can never forget the magic. That's the only best word you can call it, the magic. It was literally awesome. People use that word too often. That was really awe-inspiring, being in the silence of a forest where nothing, absolutely nothing was moving. And the only sound was when my boot crunched into the snow. When I stopped, it's like the whole universe stopped as well. Nothing moved, it was silent. And to me that was just, it was profound, it was spiritual. It was something which, Westminster Cathedral used to have, which you always try and capture in a Buddhist temple or a Buddhist monastery, especially a Buddhist monastery, in a retreat center, a place of silence where nothing moves, and you slow down and you don't move with it. You become still because you can't resist the stillness. It's all around you, surrounds you, it seeps into you, and you become still as well. You feel it. Not words, not philosophies, but just this beautiful silence in your heart, in your mind. And you realize just This is a place you can rest. A place you can let go of the troubles, the traumas, the disappointments of life. You rest there and you go out and refreshed. You lost the keys of your car, now you get perspective. Lost a loved one, you don't need the hug, you need the silence. You don't need the, are you all right? Just the time to be by yourself. And even the silence at some of the most important times of your life, you don't always need a commentary on life. You need to feel life. Find your balance. Find your way. And know that even the time of death. I got this from a Tibetan nun, but I took it on board. And I did a couple of seminars in in Hong Kong about this. We can't do it here because there's too many people. There may be a group of maybe 50 or 60 people. And I paired them off, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2. And they came together and I asked them just to chat about anything, to do some role playing. And the role playing was, when I rang the bell, because there's always a bell around in a Buddhist temple, when I rang the bell, one of you pretend to have a heart attack, cardiac arrest, pretend to die. And so, really get into it. Maybe you've seen it on the movies. I don't know, I've never seen these things, emergency room or whatever, you've probably seen it somewhere. So pretend you're going to die. And you go, oh, I don't see anything, oh, and you go on the floor. And your friend, pretend to be the first responder. See what happens. And so they did this, and one of them actually fell on the ground, and the other one was saying, don't worry, we're getting help. Look at me, don't close your eyes, stay with me. Look, you're going to be okay, it's all fine. And then after they did this for a couple of minutes, just role play, then of course we stopped and did a debriefing. And especially the person who pretended role play to have a heart attack, to be dying, what did it feel like? And they said it was just so unpleasant. Not just, dying, but this person with them saying, stay with me, we're going to get you there, ambulance is coming. That was the most disturbing part of it. Because they understood enough that dying is very private. It's an important part of your life. It's the finale. And then you want to really be there. Not to be bothered with all these other people trying to keep you alive. That's really disturbing. This is one of the reasons why a few times people have asked me, said, Ajahn Brahm, you can meditate deeply. Why don't you get like a CT scan, get all these things on your head while you're meditating? Oh, that is so disturbing. Meditation is a very silent thing. You go inside, can you give a commentary? What it's like when you get into deep meditation? Of course you can't. You're not bothered about that sort of stuff. You're going deep inside in your own side. It's a very private thing, meditation. So death should be a very private moment. They got it though, which is brilliant. So, okay, reverse the roles. Now, the person who had a heart attack, you be the first responder. The first responder, now you pretend to have the cardiac arrest. And the difference was just so amazing. Now, the person, oh, I'm dying. I said, let go. It was so much kinder. It gave people space to die in their own way, in their own time. They felt safe. There was a very powerful little tool there, because quite often we give too much advice, don't we? Instead of giving space, giving kindness, giving an aura of compassion so people can know for themselves. And to finish off with this I got this sometimes, well, it happens to me often when people come and ask questions, they want a private interview or something, And it's not just to catch up, and then they said, I had all these questions to ask you, really important ones, but then when I'm sitting here, I can't remember any of them. My mind is so peaceful. So exactly, that's how questions are answered. Not with answers. Every question you get an answer for, you have another question afterwards. It goes on like that. Sometimes you don't agree with the question, or don't agree with the answer. It's me who doesn't agree with the questions. But you don't agree with the answer, so you want to ask another question, and it can go on for so long, and it never really gets you anywhere, honestly. Well, you feel that you're being respected, which is important, but there are some times that you feel really peaceful and still, you've got no questions left. They just vanish. And of course, that wonderful time when that happened to me, all these questions I had, and there was this great monk. Many of the monks who stay with me at Bodhinyana Monastery know this story. His monk was called Ajahn Tate. Of all the monks, he actually, he really looked like a totally enlightened being and taught no one. His behaviour, his mannerisms was just so beautiful. So because he had a big reputation, I wanted to go and see him. All these big questions, this was one person, just go there and ask. Went into the room to see him after waiting a long time. Every question which I had prepared, really important ones, totally vanished. Mind was so peaceful and so clear. It was so happy and content. It didn't need any questions. I just wanted to sit there, like some idiot monk. But I was so happy, so peaceful, because I felt so safe, so accepted. What did I want questions for? I did not need to have any answers. I didn't need to improve, didn't need to have any secrets of the universe. All those questions had vanished when you were so kind and so peaceful and so warm and loving. The answer was felt. It wasn't sort of thought. Just like the silence in the forest, minus 26 degrees. You can't describe that, you feel it. And it's peaceful, still nothing moves, there's no need for questions. You felt just this incredible love. We've all searched for love and searched for acceptance, and when you feel it, you just don't want to go anywhere, it's just so precious. It's not, it's favourite food, the greatest symphony, the most beautiful vision which you might see in a sunset somewhere. This is just way past that. Just silence, peace, freedom. You don't want to think. It's like you're going to use bad similes, but best you can get. When you go to a really good concert, I haven't been to one for years now, classical music, no one talks. You can't you can't disturb or just put a stain on this incredible music. All you can do is just sit there and soak it in. Same with peace, kindness. You just sit there and just soak it in, not just with your ears, with all of your senses. Something you really feel. That was one of the best answers I ever got to all questions. Just going into the presence of this very, very holy great monk, and just sitting there, peaceful, calm, felt that there was no need. Nothing was missing. Utter contentment. So contentment is not a thought, it's a feeling. Loving kindness, metta, compassion, it's not a thought. I've seen people do that. May all beings be happy and well. May all beings be free from suffering. May all beings be... mosquito, stop it. It's dengue fever, stop it. You think that way, And people go and do metta meditation retreats when they're, for a weekend, and they come back and argue with their husband for not doing all those jobs which you gave them to do while you're on loving kindness retreat. There's a disconnect there. So why? What's happening? Somebody did actually point me out to Ajahn Brahm. He did a very beautiful response to the Rohingya crisis. How can monks ever do stuff like that? The answer is thinking too much. They're too learned, but not too developed in their hearts. Feeling it, not thinking it. Thinking you can justify almost anything through thoughts, through theories, but feeling it, you can't do that. It's wrong. Don't know why the reasons are. No, you can't just harm or hurt any other being. So anyway, this is when the Buddhism or the religion, or don't know what do you call it starts coming really from the heart. You feel these things. The silence, the peace, the kindness, the being in front of somebody when you talk with them instead of just emailing them, just not sort of tweeting. That's why I apologise, but I have to go overseas. Go overseas, why? Well, send internet overseas, YouTube, everything. So much stuff is on the internet. Every joke that ever was. every talk, every subject you can ever find, it's on there somewhere. So shouldn't I just retire and just, like they do? Someone sent me I've seen this before, but it's actually just been upgraded. The Japanese robot monks. The robots, they do perfect funeral services for people. You don't have to get a monk to come or a nun to go and do your chanting for you at a funeral. So you get one of these monks, press a button, perfect chanting. Even all the actions and stuff. So even like for anyone who wants to invite the monks to their house for dana, you don't need to do that. We get a few robots and we send them over to you, and then the robots do perfect chanting, perfect paritta chanting. You even get the robots who sprinkle the holy water, tie the string, and you don't have to worry about all this food and what the monk likes, what the monk doesn't like. You just charge it up, very cheap. Well, what's the difference? Artificial intelligence, artificial monks and nuns, artificial nuns. Of course there's a huge difference there, isn't there? And the huge difference is something which is not thinking. It's where it comes from, the personal seeing and hearing, the tones and everything else. That is so important, the personal contact. And that's just last of all. You should know this by now. That is one of the reasons why that the Buddha made it very, very hard for a monk or a nun to be independent, to be self-sufficient. Sometimes I just wonder, the nuns, myself, we've got all this land. Can't we just irrigate it and grow our own vegetables and stuff? Just like those monks in New Norcia used to do. Why not? And the reason is because if we did that, if we were self-sufficient, if we became hermits, we would be saying, we don't need you. Please don't come and disturb us. And there's something very wrong about that. The Buddha made us deliberately dependent on you, so you can be deliberately dependent on us. We can actually interact, not with the words, but just being kind, having a safe place, a place of peace where you can come and meet the secular world with the spiritual world. Places where we can come whenever we've lost our keys. Thank you for listening. Excellent. Okay. Not bad for jet lag. After, I don't know how many hours. I think I left on Thursday. I left on Thursday morning. Right, this afternoon. Anyway, what have we got here for overseas? Oh, we got from Poland and Jordan, Lithuania, and from Sweden. Marta, I shouldn't say who it is, but from Poland and Jordan, how to get calm when you are full of impulsive negative emotions. It's sometimes so hard to stop that impulse. And how can one purify himself or herself from negative thoughts and feelings like jealousy and anger? You try and do it, and it gets worse. So this is why we just leave it alone. Let it be. Just like you have a wound in your body, you sort of isolate it, put on a sterile bandage or something, so you're not interfering with it, but you're just protecting it, and it heals by itself. So that's just like negative emotion about losing your car keys. You can actually just think, oh, stupid, it's only car keys, you can get some more car keys, it doesn't really matter. But that's not enough. Just to be in a calm, peaceful place, and just to let the emotion or the negativity just subside. Just like you let it disappear and vanish. If you don't feed it, it vanishes. Here's a good plug here for the Brentwood Buddhist Society, that's in Essex, who they made these small bags, for raising funds for the Anukampa Bhikkhuni project over there. Little bags. And on the bags it was my quote, "Water the flowers, not the weeds." It's one of my quotes. Water the flowers, not the weeds. Have impulsive negative emotions, those are weeds. Don't water them. Just let them just fade away, and you water the beautiful emotions. And you're not full of impulsive negative emotions. Absolutely not. The way you wrote this, if you were full of impulsive negative emotions, you would have used many more swear words and negative words. No, sometimes you have negative emotions, but a lot of times you have beautiful emotions. And purify yourself from negative thoughts. Is that really wise? To purify yourself? What are we talking about here? Old simile of the purify the trees in the forest of all of their leaning and damage. Can you imagine? Because I was talking to this German fellow, and the forest is so important. So can you imagine all the German people who really do like order and perfection going into the forest and planing down the trees, pushing them to being vertical, making sure all the limbs are there and painting all the leaves so they're all green, making them perfect. No one would do that. So negative thoughts. How about realizing negative thoughts are important for you? They're part of who you are. They are just little damage from the storms of life, disappointments, people not understanding you, reacting over too much. They are part of life. So we embrace the negative thoughts, just like we embrace the beauty of a tree which is crooked and bent and twisted all over. The most beautiful trees in the forest are like that. So then, the negative thoughts are actually beautiful. We put that word on them, negative. And actually that fed them and made them worse. Instead, we allow them to be, and then they fade away. From Lithuania, how to keep following your heart when things around you are falling apart and pressuring you to act otherwise. That means if they are all around you and they're creating negativity, just take a break. Find some time out. You deserve it. If you can find time out when things are falling apart and go to a place of peace and safety, then when you come out afterwards, just like the building officer of the local council, you see things in a different way afterwards. Things don't change, but your perspective changes. Things falling apart, that's part of life, and that's wonderful. As a monk, I'm getting old now, so I am falling apart. When things fall apart, some of the old buildings in England, when they fall apart, they let them fall apart. And it's called heritage. These old buildings which look really cute and really nice. Okay, they're bent all over the place. The roofs are so low in some of these old buildings. And they're crooked, like the Leaning Tower of Pisa. Or Pisa, not pizza. I must be getting hungry. So, this is actually follow your heart when you shall change what you demand. Just like the person dying. Just let go, be peace, be compassion. Yeah, they're dying. There's more chance they recover. How can I live a life without suffering when there are so many tragic things happen in the world like terrorism? I feel suffer when other people suffer. But do you also feel happiness when other people feel happy? Do you feel just this beautiful sense of uplift when somebody is really kind and caring and forgiving and loving? A lot of times that we gravitate to suffering. We turn on the news when we see suffering. For myself, I just look at the newspapers. And this is quite honest, and when Lucinia will say, I'm not exaggerating here, I just go straight for the comic pages. Garfield, Calvin and Hobbes. So that's what I like in the newspapers. That's why I hardly ever read the Australian... I hardly ever read the Australian newspaper. They don't have cartoon strips. Such a dull, negative. But I like the sort of West Australian because it has cartoon strips. That's why I read that. And you get such beautiful wisdom, out of those cartoon strips. The old positive one of a Snoopy and Charlie Brown. It's a great example of just getting very lot of suffering when Charlie Brown says, one day we're all going to die. And Snoopy says, yes, but most days we don't die. That's such a wise thing to say. For a little dog. It's just positive. I mean, both are right. One day we're all going to die. Yeah, you can't argue with that, can you? But it's just one perspective, and most days you don't die. Great. So that's how you can live a life without suffering. When many tragic things happen in the world like terrorism, and many times you don't even see any terrorism. I went twice past Parsons Green Station, where 2 terrorist attacks happened since somebody got stabbed and a bomb was left on the train. I never saw any bombs or any terrorism. Did I miss out on my... when I went to LA, when I went to Los Angeles, that was really cool, some years ago, because, whoever was arranging things, arranged everything perfectly. Once I was going somewhere and the freeway was stopped because there was a squad cars were chasing, it was a car chase. We stopped, and then whoosh, and then whoosh afterwards. thank you for arranging that, because you haven't been to LA if you haven't seen the car chase. And then right at the end, just the cherry on top of the ice cream was when he went to LAX airport. And as we were going in there, another police cars were screaming, and they went half up the pavement, doors opened, 2 policemen or cops came out with machine guns. Not only submachine guns, but they were pretty scary. And they ran up the stairs, to the next level. And at the little landing halfway up, they had to stop. They were so unfit. And they're supposed to be policemen, first responders, terrorist attack. I suppose it's one strategy. If the terrorists had actually seen them, they'd have probably burst out laughing, allowing themselves to be overpowered very easily. That's what I saw with my own eyes. Really funny. But that's the only terrorism I've ever seen. It was almost like Mickey Mouse terrorism. But anyway, so how much do you actually see that? How many people in the world don't have such problems? So when we water the flowers, instead of obsessing about the weeds, then we can change a lot of things in life. Especially for you. So at least you can be peaceful and calm, healthy, and feel the stillness, the kindness. And that helps enormously. Okay, so any questions from the floor here? Okay, so we can finish off. So I can have, I don't know, whatever time it is, my body thinks it is. So we can pay respects to Buddha, Dhamma, and Sangha, and then do whatever we need to do. Arahang Samma Sambuddho Bhagava Buddhaṃ Bhagavantā Abhivādemi Suakato Bhagavata Dhammo Dhammang Namasami Supatipano Bhagavato Sāvaka Sangho Sanghang Namami. Very good. Okay. Very good. Hello.
I just want to say thanks.
Yeah.
A couple of weeks ago.
Yeah.
Having a nervous breakdown.
Yeah, and you survived.